Good evening, folks. Glad you could be here. We've had a good weekend with our friend Ronny. About the best we can do, seeing as we can't go to Israel, is have this tour of Israel with Ronny being here, and it's such a blessing. I'm so glad he could come. He's flying back to Israel in the early morning, and got a long flight back. So Ronny's been our guide when we've been over there a few times, and been so blessed to have him. Last time I went, unfortunately, it wasn't him, because I thought he was booked. And we only had a small group, and I thought, well, you know, he's real famous, and I don't think we could get him for our group. But then I bumped into him, and he was with like four, they looked like nuns. I don't know if they were or not, but he was with these four or five ladies, and that was his group. And he said, how come I'm not your guide? I said, well, I didn't think we had enough people to have you, Ronny. He said, look what I got here. He said, you could have me. And so he's always our favorite. And next year, hopefully, if we're able to go, I hope he's available for that. But for now, here he is going to share with us somewhat of Israel. So would you welcome Ronny Simon?
Good evening, folks, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Pastor Malcolm, Pastor Len, for giving me the opportunity to share with you through this whole weekend. We had a great, I hope that you would agree, those that attended a virtual tour of Israel. But this evening, I'm going to speak about something which is related, obviously, part of the story of the land, but it's going to be an unpleasant message. Not easy for me to deliver, not easy for you to receive. It's not something that you usually hear in a church service on a Sunday evening. This is a message of violence, it's a message of death, it's a message of bloodshed. What I'll try to do tonight is to give you a short overview about a short history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but the focus will be on what happens in Gaza, and therefore we'll speak more about Hamas, which is one part, if you wish, of the Palestinian people. And in order to speak about that, you need to start at least half a century ago, or maybe 3/4 of a century, because once you try to understand today what is the nature of the conflict and how come people are in such condition, you can't start today. You need to understand the sources for it. You need to understand the roots of the conflict, and that's part of my plan for this evening. I'll try as hard as I can to stay objective. I cannot be totally objective, as you understand. I do not want to add anything to the propaganda that we have around the world. There's so much deception and so much disinformation. Confusion is serving everybody, apparently. We need to do some cleanup. We need to understand the core issues on the table, and we need, as intelligent human beings, after you know the facts, you make an opinion. Too many people on the planet are very zealous about a cause they know absolutely nothing about, and that's dangerous. The combination of zeal and the combination of ignorance is not only pathetic, it's dangerous. You want to fight for something, be my guest. At least know what is it that you're fighting for, and get to know the facts. And most people don't really care about the facts, and this is a source of frustration as well. And you will hear some frustration from me tonight, because few things are so obvious. Apparently, if you don't want to see them, you're not going to see them. Totally ignore them. I'm not going to speak against Islam tonight. I'm not a theologian. I don't have to. It's enough to see what people are willing to do to people in behalf of their religion. That's all I need to know about a religion. For the last 14 years in the Middle East, what the media was calling the Arab Spring, how stupid term that was now, we should call it maybe the freezing Muslim winter. Muslims are butchering Muslims in behalf of Islam. That's all I need to know about a religion. So the idea that we need to take out the enemy, the idea that it's us or them, it's not something that's new, but now it gets the world's attention. I will give the Muslim neighbors that we have, including Hamas, one credit. They don't hide their intention. They say it loud and clear. We're going to kill you. Such a simple message that we refuse to understand. Because once you understand the message, and don't listen to me, listen to them, you need to take action. And the action is violent. The action is defending yourself, because the message is on the table, we are going to kill you. How do you deal with that? What kind of diplomacy you can lead? What kind of negotiations you can have with the enemy when that's the position? By the way, do not believe a word I'm sharing with you tonight. I cannot be trusted. I'm not reliable. You go and do your study. And once you do the study, you see that I'm not that far away from the facts. But the facts are important. So my plan is for the next hour and 50 minutes to give you this overview, try to be not too emotional if possible. And then as I understand from Pastor Len, we'll open that to Q&A. There will be a mic going around, and I'm more than happy to answer questions if you have any about the message I'm going to share with you tonight. The screen behind me is going to play a very important role for you to understand the message, and you will have a triple challenge this evening. Number one, get used to my funny accent. Number two, try to follow the screen. Number three, try to follow what I'm trying to share with you, and I'm not a very disciplined speaker. So to synchronize what you see over there and me, that may be a challenge, your problem. I'll try to do the best I can to make it as clear and to try to slow down because I do tend to speed up whenever the things are important. Let me start with the most painful thing that you're experiencing, and that will be what we call the hostages. For the last nearly half a year, we have Israelis, men, women, babies, elderly, who are missing. They were kidnapped from their homes, from the warm beds. Many of them were murdered in the process. And as per now, we have 164, if I recall correctly, people who are kept hostages, about 34 confirmed dead. We don't even know the numbers. We know the numbers because Hamas will not surrender this information. Most likely, they don't know all the numbers, but they are not cooperating on that level. We speak about exchanging prisoners, exchanging hostages. Israel is willing, but we have one demand. We need to know the names of those who are alive. We don't even know that. Let me tell you how we treat Hamas prisoners in our prisons, and check me out, all right? They can see the lawyers, they can see doctors, they can order food from every restaurant in the country, they can see their families, they can get education. That's how we treat Hamas's prisoners in our prisons. Because everything should be done in a civilized way by the Geneva Convention, only one party keeps it, and that's the Israeli party. The Red Cross is refusing to participate. The Red Cross doesn't do the basic job. Go and bring medications to our hostages. They won't even do that because they don't really care. And therefore, the issue is more than just Israel vis-a-vis Hamas. Let me submit to you, we speak about a global conflict. When historians are going to view the history of the first half of the 21st century, it's an opinion of mine, they will say the following. It was a time of a war between religions. It was a global conflict. It started in 9/11. It continued with Israel defeated Hamas, and we are going to defeat Hamas utterly. We are going to find them. We are going to kill them. I'm sorry for that. Gloves are off. We tried and tried and tried. Nothing works. Third battle will be to try to stop Iran. And once Iran will be crushed or devastated or whatever, a local revolution, that may give the world kind of a break for a few decades, because right now, Iran is the mastermind behind all those proxies, although the real villain of the story is Qatar, because the money is coming from Qatar. Did you know that Qatar invested in your universities $4.7 billion? Don't be surprised when American kids, bright kids, have no clue, carrying banners from the river to the sea. Try to check with them what is it that they are demonstrating for. They don't have a clue. So we speak about the global issue. The fact that the Houthis in Yemen are launching ballistic missiles at Israel, that's not a local conflict. Europe begins to understand. The Europeans are freaking out to see those demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of Muslims in European capitals. For them, it's a wake-up call because they did not understand what grows in European cities. It happens in America. It will happen unless we take action. So it is indeed more than just a limited issue far away. It is something which is indeed global. I hope I'll try to convince you that this is the case. Let me start by showing you this slide behind me. It looks like the 4th of July, huh? Fireworks. Well, these are not fireworks. You see a barrage of rockets that was launched from Gaza City over the area of Tel Aviv. And this is the Iron Dome, amazing technology, just waiting to intercept those rockets. And for some time, that will be the night skies in Israel. It was kind of almost like fun to watch. because these rockets are not very efficient and the Iron Dome is intercepting 94% of them, but it's absolutely crazy. The siren goes off and you have a few seconds to run to the bomb shelter, and if you don't get to the bomb shelter, you may be killed. And this is normal life in Israel for the last 20 years. Every now and then, Hamas will open fire, and you go and check me out. Israel is retaliating. Israel never started a war of violence, not against Egypt, and not Syria, and not Jordan, and not Lebanon. Israel is retaliating, and we have the right to retaliate. And therefore, it's a situation that no country is facing, and you know what will happen if somebody will fire rockets from Tijuana into San Diego. I don't need to tell you what will be America's response. For some reason, the world thinks that Israel should be very gentle in the way that we respond. This is daily life in my country. It's insane. Nobody should live in such conditions. Let's start with this story, and let me introduce to you the Gaza Strip. A very small area, as you can tell. This is the land, the state of Israel. That's the Gaza area, the most crowded place on the planet. 2.2 million people. Many of them will be called refugees. Let me try to explain that. The term refugee has a very clear definition by international law. Somebody that his land was invaded, his house was destroyed, and he's seeking for asylum, he's fleeing his home and his country for a better place, for a safer place. By that definition, most of the people in Gaza are not qualified to be refugees, because most of them left their homes during the War of Israel's independence in 1948, even before the war started. I'll get to that in just a minute, but it's important, because a refugee, by definition, is somebody who lived in a certain country for a long time, at least 5 years, that has some connections to this land, and by leaving, he's losing everything, all the investments and all the property, and he's in danger for his life, and he has to start all over again. That was the definition. For the Palestinian refugees, the UN made a specific definition. If you lived in the area for 2 years, you're qualified to be called a refugee. Which means if you came in as an illegal worker and you stayed for 2 seasons, the world sees that this is your homeland and this is your place from time immemorial, and you are qualified to be called a refugee. And by the way, you pay the monthly salaries, because somebody has to take care about them. Somebody has to try to rehabilitate them. They need to become citizens of some place. In the case of the Palestinians, they can inherit the position to the 5th generation, just in their case. After 1945, tens of millions of refugees were roaming through the European continent. 20 million Germans that were kicked out from Poland and the Ukraine and Russia went home to Germany. We don't hear about these refugees anymore, because everybody finds a job, they get a citizenship, you don't have the title anymore. In the case of the Palestinians, an exception. You can be a refugee forever and ever. You can be an American citizen, and you can still apply to get this allowance as a refugee. You don't understand. It was something specific that was created by the world for the Palestinian refugees. Nobody tried to rehabilitate them. Not even one was rehabilitated. And I'm saying that because refugees are one of the tragedies of the story. We speak about people that live in terrible conditions, not because they have to, because the Arab countries refuse to accommodate them. It's a tool. It's a tool which is used politically. People that lost their homes, invited by the Arab countries that refuse now to accommodate them, that's a story. Not one refugee was rehabilitated. Think about Europe after the Second World War. You don't find refugees anymore. By the way, what about Jewish refugees? Did you hear the term Jewish refugees? I bet you when you hear the combination of words refugees, Middle East, the first thing that comes to mind are the poor Palestinians, and they are poor. But you know that when Israel was born in 1948, when the rumors came from the battlefield that the Jewish army is defeating the Arab armies, Jews that lived in Baghdad from the days of Ezra and Nehemiah had to flee for their lives because they were in danger. The locals would simply riot and would wipe out the community. Jews in Alexandria from the days of Jeremiah had to flee Egypt long before Islam was even born because they were in danger. What about Jewish refugees? 800,000 Jews lost their homes and property and came to Israel. You don't hear about them, they came home. These are the Israelis of today. It didn't happen to the Palestinians. So next time you hear refugees Middle East, don't assume automatically just the poor Palestinians. Jews also lost home and property and came to Israel as a result, almost like exchanging populations. Israel even made an idea. What about those refugees that left the country? They can take Jewish property in the Arab countries. Maybe that will settle the problem. You must be kidding me. Nobody wants to solve the problem. The problem has to stay alive as an upfront against Israel. So Gaza is inhabited by people that technically are called refugees, but they won't qualify to be those because they left their homes before the war even started. So this was a sidetrack to take, and let's go back to the very beginning of the story. Here's a little scale there to speak about who controlled Gaza over the years, and we go section by section, but I do want to start in 1947 with your permission. 1947, after the Second World War, Great Britain had a mandate over Palestine, and Great Britain won the war but lost the empire. They are exhausted, they are tired, they lost a lot of soldiers, they want to go back home. And they decide to pull the forces out of India and Sri Lanka, that was called Ceylon at the time, and Palestine as well. By then, two people fight for the land, Jews and Arabs. And Great Britain understood if we are leaving here without trying to find a settlement, it will lead to total massacre. We try to find a peaceful solution. So they asked the United Nations to try to find a way. And the UN, just born April 1st of 1945 in San Francisco, is sending a team of 11 members. And that team was supposed to meet with Jewish leaders and with Arab leaders, bring them to the table for a peace conference to try to find a peaceful solution. The Jewish leadership was more than happy to cooperate. These are the years after the Holocaust. 6 million Jews perished. Whatever the world was willing to offer as a homeland for the Jews, we could not say no. The Arabs refused to come to the table. This is Muslim land. We're not negotiating. The Jews have no rights here. And therefore the British idea was in vain. And there was no peace conference. So that team of 11 members, quite frustrated, after touring the country, tried to meet with leaders, totally turned down by the Arabs, decided that there's only one way to end it peacefully. When Britain is leaving the area, there will be a place for two countries, one for the Jews, one for the Arabs. Today they speak about a two-state solution. Basically, they offered a two-state solution back in 1947. Think about the tragedy. That's what the world wants today, a two-state solution. It was offered 77 years ago. If the other team would have taken the solution of two-state solution, maybe the conflict today was on a totally different level. All the lives lost and all the property and the human tragedy, they tried to accomplish now what was given to them already almost 80 years ago. So the team decided that the only way to solve that will be partition, and that's how the land will be divided. The land of Israel, sandwiched between the River Jordan on one side and the Mediterranean Sea, will be divided to two national homes. There will be a home for the local Arabs. Let's call them Palestinians for the lack of a better term. But let me submit to you, the term Palestinian as a nationality was not born, not even in the 70s. Let's speak about the local Arabs. There will be a Jewish state, and Jerusalem, by that definition, will be an international city. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, a small enclave, too important to be the capital of one nation. Therefore, it will be an international area. That's the plan. The UN voted for it. And on the 29th of November 1947, that was the official plan on the table, a two-state solution. Problem is that one party decided to take it and the other one did not. So the British forces evacuated Israel the 14th of May 1948. It was a Friday, which is Israel's National Day or Independence Day. 5 Arab armies invaded Israel's territory. The Jordanians and the Lebanese and the Egyptians and the Syrians and the Iraqis, expeditionary force from Morocco and Sudan, we don't even border with these countries, was an opportunity to destroy the Jewish state. You know what happened? There was the state of Israel. We prevailed. We won the war. The question is, how come there is no Palestinian state? If I'd ask you the question, if you don't know the history, and I guess that some of you do, but some don't, how come there was no Palestinian state? You will answer me by saying, because you, the Jews, conquered their territory. And for that reason, there is no Palestine. You're wrong. And do not believe me, go and check. Here's what happened. The land that was offered to the Palestinians, this one, since they refused to take the plan, and the Arab armies invaded, we prevailed, we won the war, we conquered more land than the UN offered to the Jewish state, but by the time the war was over, this is the new condition of the land. This is a place that will be called the West Bank. Let me use the biblical name, Judea and Samaria. The West Bank of what? Anybody wants to guess? Of the River Jordan. It's a geographical term. Now it's used more politically. The river has an East Bank as well. Anybody speaks about the East Bank. And therefore we speak about the following. The king of Jordan, Abdullah I, sent his army seemingly to help the Palestinians. And after the war was over, and the ceasefire and the armistice was signed, most of the land that was offered to the Palestinians was now in Jordanian hands. The army of Jordan was deployed there. They were supposed to go back to Jordan, hand it over to the local Palestinian Arabs. The king refused to do so. And therefore, the land that was offered to the Palestinians is now occupied by Jordan. Occupation by any means. I did a study. Interesting. Nobody calls the West Bank under Jordan occupied territories. When did they start to call it occupied territories? I'm offering 20,000 points for correct answer. Since we have it. Since 1967, this is occupied territories. It was occupied by Jordan. The Egyptians, how interesting, also came to help the Palestinian brothers. That was their land. But they lost most of it because they refused to take the deal. And after the war was over, the Gaza Strip is in Egyptian hands. The Egyptians were supposed to go home and give it over to the Palestinians. This is your territory, build a country. Egypt refused to leave. And therefore there is no Palestinian state, not because of Israel. The land that was offered to them was taken, stolen, robbed by Jordan, by Egypt, and that's the only reason why there was no Palestinian state until this very day. So the end of the War of Independence, they called it the disaster, or the Nakba, in 1948, basically created one state, home for the Jewish people, and the Palestinian state was not born. So between 1948 to 1967, since we speak about the Gaza Strip, it was in the hands of the Egyptians. People accuse us, Israel, to be an apartheid state. Let me tell you what, in order to call us an apartheid state, you're either an idiot or just a common anti-Semite. Israel's population is 10 million people. 22% are Arabs. Israeli Arabs are Israelis. They have members in the parliament, they have parties, they can vote, they can be elected. There was one Supreme Court judge who is an Arab. They're integrated in every aspect of life. They can live anywhere they want, doctors and nurses and athletes. Israeli Arabs are Israelis. Let me tell you what means apartheid. Apartheid means that when the Egyptians controlled this area, the Gaza Strip, those refugees who fled to take shelter in Egypt were treated like dogs by the Egyptians. That's apartheid. They were not citizens. They did not have any rights whatsoever. They were treated in a very shameful way. Those who fled to Lebanon or those who fled to Syria are treated in a very shameful way. That's apartheid, not Israel. Israel is not an apartheid state. The Arab countries are. So these Palestinian refugees enjoy zero rights until this very day. They are there for the third generation and they have zero rights. In Lebanon, they can't even leave the camps, let alone to get married or to have citizenship or decent education, nothing. That's apartheid. And therefore, when you use that term, please be careful. Because in Israel, they're Israelis. There's only one thing, they do not serve in the army, not mandatory for them. They can volunteer. Mandatory just for the Jews. But besides that, Israeli Arabs enjoy democracy. The only Arabs in the region that the property is respected, their honor is respected, their rights are respected are the Israeli Arabs. Israel is not an apartheid. It's so easy to check. Why would anybody even say that? Because this is not an opinion. It's just a fact. There's no racism, no discrimination. Israeli Arabs are Israelis. What I forgot to mention was that when the war started in 1948, before the Arab armies invaded Israel, they extended an invitation to the local Palestinians. The mighty Arab armies are coming. We're going to throw the Jews into the ocean. Make way, because you may be caught in the line of fire. Come to our countries. We'll host you, just for a short time. It won't take too long. And after we get rid of the Jews, you go back to their homes. 80%, not my data, United Nations. 80% of the people who are called refugees today left their homes as a result of that invitation. They're not even qualified to be refugees. So we speak about an invitation for the Arabs from Palestine to leave their homes. Those who stayed, they are the Israelis of today. We have a radio broadcast by the mayor of the town of Haifa encouraging the people, don't leave, he says. You're with us. We live together. We work together. You're safe. Don't leave. So we do have enough information when you speak about who is a refugee. Until 1967, therefore, that was in Egyptian hands. In 1967, Israel wins an amazing victory, the Six-Day War, and we take the Gaza Strip and all of the Sinai Peninsula from the Egyptians and the West Bank from the Jordanians. And from 1967, these are territories that Israel has. I will call them liberated territories, but that's an opinion. Some will call them occupied territories, be my guest. The only real name should be disputed territories. These territories were offered to the Palestinians. They refused to take it. It was taken illegally by Jordan and Egypt. Israel conquered that from Jordan and Egypt. The land doesn't have a legal status. Disputed territories. Most called occupied. Some will say liberated. But the real term to use is disputed territories. So now we're in Gaza. And when Israel came to Gaza in 1967, the lifespan of an average Gazan was 48 years. It's 76 now. Infant mortality was 22 to 1,000. It's down to 4 now, the lowest in the Arab world. We did that. And I'm saying that because the world says Israel commits genocide in Gaza. If that's our plan, we do a lousy job. Gaza's population is the fastest growing in the world. Sanitation, water, fuel, we provide that. Life in Gaza was not better than what is now thanks to Israel, not to Egypt and not to the Palestinians. Genocide? That's not how you commit genocide. Once again, as I said, don't trust me. You go and check. So 1967, Israel is occupying Gaza. And what happens as a result of that is that Israel is investing in the Gaza Strip. We build communities of Israelis that will be called settlements. But most of the Gaza Strip will be in the hands of, let's say, the locals or the Palestinians, although we are the sovereign. During that whole process, we made peace with Egypt. In 1979, the 26th of March, we signed the peace accord with the Egyptians. Israel is pulling out from Sinai. And during the negotiations, we are asking President Sadat of Egypt, Mr. President, Egypt occupied Gaza. Please take Gaza with you. And Sadat says very cleverly, no, you stick with Gaza. I don't need Gaza back. In 1988, a few years earlier, the king of Jordan, Hussein, the grandson of Abdullah who conquered the West Bank, is making an announcement. Jordan relinquishes any demand to the West Bank. My grandfather, he said, was wrong to annex the West Bank. We have no demands for it. Anybody can do with it whatever they want. So now there are two pieces of property that were offered to be a Palestinian homeland in 1947 that nobody wants. Jordan says we don't want the West Bank. Egypt says you get Gaza with you. It opens the way to some negotiation. I have to say that the only country in the region that recognized the Palestinians as a nation was Israel. The only nation in the region that said that there is people here that deserve to have a land. We'll negotiate what size of land, what kind of an entity. Wasn't Jordan, and wasn't Egypt, and wasn't Syria, it was Israel. So during the negotiation with the Egyptians, our prime minister, a very hard liar, Menachem Begin, brought up the idea for the first time. What about an autonomy for the Palestinians? Nobody spoke about it. Because if you spoke about the Palestinian autonomy, you're the enemy of Jordan. It was supposed to be Jordanian territory, and nobody wanted to be the enemy of Jordan. If you speak about a Palestinian autonomy in Gaza, you are against the Egyptians. It was believed to be Egyptian territory. Nobody in the Arab world even mentioned there was a people called Palestinians with a right to a land, and you thought this conflict goes back thousands of years in time. You're wrong. It wasn't an issue until the 80s of the last century. It's a new conflict on the world map. But years and years of propaganda were able to create the impression that we are dealing with that for centuries upon centuries. That's wrong. So now we have a new situation. Two pieces of property that nobody wants. It opens the gate for some kind of negotiations. Israel initiates some peace talks with the PLO, believed to be representing the Palestinians back at the time. It was called the Oslo Accord because it started secretly in the Norwegian capital. And then it surfaced and went to Washington, D.C., when President Clinton was behind those efforts, and that produced an agreement. The agreement was called the Declaration of Principles, and Israel said the following: we are going to pull out from land, give it to the Palestinians. Please don't say back, it was never theirs. Give it to the Palestinians. What they need to do in return is to deliver. Stop the instigation in your media, collect the illegal weapons, build a country, we'll assist you. You'll have some opposition, we will assist you. That was the idea. And I can still remember, wasn't that long ago, this new wave of optimism. Hallelujah. Finally, the locals are reasoning. Let me tell you what, it wasn't about common sense. Common sense and the Middle East are not good friends. Nothing, it works on common sense. Now we know. But back at the time, we thought it's all about politics. They want a country. Well, let's try to find a solution. We'll find a solution because it's good for everybody, right? Well, who thinks in such terms in the Middle East? Definitely not everybody. The Palestinian autonomy was founded in the 1st of July 1994. Arafat is coming to Gaza, and he starts his reign, so to speak, and his control over the area. So now most of Gaza will be in the hands of the Palestinians. It's not a state, it's an autonomy. They control most of the area. Israel, that built its communities, still keeps this enclave here and some others in the area, because the plan was, we are going to give you a piece of land. If you can deliver, we're going to pull out from more land. It all depends how much progress you're making to live in peace side by side to us. Guess what happened? We created kind of a haven for Palestinian terrorists. And from that area, rockets were fired in the town of Sderot, and Israeli vehicles were fired on the roads. And when little Jimmy wanted to visit his friend in the nearby community, the family car had to be escorted by a tank and a helicopter gunship. It was absolutely insane. But for a while, we invested in a brand new airport for the Palestinians. Gaza enjoyed an international harbor. We did that because we wanted to live in peace. Didn't happen. So things were escalating. It was getting worse and worse. And we decided this is not working. We are going to initiate another plan. Maybe that will convince the Palestinians that peace is not so bad. Under a hardliner like Ariel Sharon, Israel initiated what will be called the disengagement plan. We're going to pull out from Gaza. All of Gaza will be given to the Palestinians. What will we get in return? Peace. True, it was not through negotiations. It was a unilateral decision made by Israel. Big mistake, I have to say. Because meanwhile, something happened. In 1988, a new group was founded in the Palestinian territories called Hamas. And Hamas focuses not on Palestinian state. They don't care about Palestinian state. Hamas is fighting for Islam and world jihad. Not for politics, but for religion. And it's a whole new ballgame, as they say in America. Don't you impressed by my Americanisms? A whole new ballgame. So now we have a new plan on the table, and Ariel Sharon is initiating the one. He was really criticized for that. But the plan was, the world wants Israel to pull out from Gaza. It will have to lead for peace. Well, let's put it to a test. We did pull out from Gaza. There was not a single Israeli in the Gaza Strip since September 11, 2005, not even one. So once you see the signs, free Gaza from whom? Maybe from Hamas. Israel is not invested in the Gaza Strip anymore. By the way, there was a kind of a sidetrack for the whole deal, which said the following: we are going to pull out, but it's going to be working together with the Egyptians, because there is a line here, and this will be the border of Gaza with Egypt. And we did not control that line, and through tunnels under the line, a lot of stuff came into Gaza, stuff that you don't want to have in Gaza. And the plan was, we are pulling out, but you Egyptians are going to seal all those tunnels, so no weapons and no wanted terrorists will go in and out. That was the deal. Egypt kept only part of the deal, and we thought that we are controlling the area. So pulling out from Gaza was a new situation, and we controlled the borders. Everything we screened to see what goes into the Gaza area. But why does the world expect Israel to provide Gaza with whatever they need? What about Egypt? They are their brothers and sisters. Let the Egyptians supply Gaza with everything they need. The Egyptians are not idiots. They don't care. So the world is expecting us, Israel, and we do. You show me another situation in world history. The two people are at war, and one is supplying the other with not weapons, not directly, but with food and water and fuel and pharmaceutics. Never happened. It happens now. Because you do want to distinguish, if possible, between the good guys and the bad guys. Everything that Gaza has is coming to Israel. The Egyptians don't care. They don't send in anything. Arab countries may care and they send in some supplies, but not the Egyptians. So the deal was basically we're pulling out. You control those tunnels, and then Gaza will get whatever they need, but not weapons and not ammunition and not explosives. Everything is coming through the Egyptian territory, through tunnels into the Gaza Strip. And right after we pulled out from the Gaza area, and back then Ms. Condoleezza Rice was Secretary of State, and the US thought this is an opportunity. We're going to give the Palestinians the right to vote. There will be democratic elections for the first time ever. The US really tried to prove, I'm not criticizing, that Arabs can live in democracy. It didn't work in Iraq that well. They tried that the Palestinians are a test case. We are going to prove it's possible. And then the people that have the right to vote will definitely vote for democracy, because democracy is the greatest. And we told Ms. Rice, listen, if Hamas can run for the elections, they may win. And that's not democracy. And she said, nevertheless, that's what the US aspires. People have the right to vote. And they did. And guess who won the elections big time when it took place in June of 2006? Anybody wants to guess? Hamas did 75% of the vote. Now let me ask you a question, okay? You know what you're voting for, right? If you read the platform or the agenda of Hamas, read the charter. It's published, it's in English, easy to find. Read what they are for. They don't promise freedom. They don't promise creating jobs and economy. They promise fanaticism, misery, everlasting war, and destruction of everybody. Why would you vote for such a party? I guess you won't, but they did. And that was an eye-opener. If that's what people vote for, what chances do we have to find a peaceful solution? So when you read the charter of Hamas, you understand what these people are supporting, basically. And I'll say it once again. Hamas is not interested in a Palestinian state. World Jihad is advocating one entity ruled by a caliph where all the Muslims are together. Let's say the Sunni Muslims are not even going there. When you speak about Arab nationalities, you are defeating the purpose of Islam. Division to nationalities is weakening the Muslim world. They aspire to have one entity with all the Muslims included, and not a Palestinian state. They don't care about a state. They're not freedom fighters. They're fighting for Islam. And by the way, Islam does not have to proclaim war against anybody. Islam is in the state of war since it was born. Don't listen to me. Go and read. They divide the world to two, Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb, the house of Islam and the house of war. All the places which are not the house of Islam, Islam is at war with them without proclaiming anything. This is a permanent, ongoing condition. Who invented the idea of a master race? Any idea? Well, you know what I mean, right? The Germans. Well, let me tell you what. In the Muslim mindset, it's in the Quran. In a Muslim country, if you have non-Muslims, they are treated as dhimmi. Go and Google the term dhimmi. Dhimmi means second-class citizens. It's incorporated in the constitutions of Muslim countries. In Jordan, Saudi Arabia, a Jew cannot be a citizen. Impossible. Heartland of Islam, a Jew will defile the purity of Islam. That's the master race. They are commanded to discriminate all non-Muslims in Muslim countries. In the Bible, by the way, we are commanded to love the alien, to take care for them, to support them, right? Here is a difference in the view. That's the master race. Hitler had some good teachers. Go and check. I'm not making up any of it. So now we have Hamas winning the civil war between Hamas and the PLO. Hamas wins the Gaza Strip, and the PLO controls the West Bank, basically, and these two are at war against one another. You see, the world wants us to negotiate. Israel said, with whom? Who represents the Palestinians? Well, nobody. They are divided to two entities, which are at war with one another. We can make a deal with the PLO. They only represent half of the Palestinians. How many states you want? A three-state solution? So who represents the Palestinians? Nobody. So who are we going to negotiate with? You understand the question? It was good for Israel. Israel had a position to say, we are willing to, but we can talk to one leadership. If they are divided into two, who are we going to talk to? Israel enjoyed the situation of the Palestinians being divided. In fact, we encouraged it. Divide and conquer is a devastating principle, as it was proven in October 7th of 2023. But that was Israel's policy, at least for a while. So now the West Bank has new masters, the Gaza Strip new masters, and these are Hamas, and we need to know these people just a little better because many people do not understand. I had the privilege to guide groups in Israel for the last 40 years or so, and whenever I had the opportunity to speak about politics, and you have to, you can't come to Israel at least without mentioning what's going on, I said it repeatedly, Hamas and ISIS are the same. In fact, Hamas started. Hamas's ideology is Muslim Brotherhood, and I'm sending you to read the book of the founder of the movement, Muhammad al-Banna from 1932. It's Hitler's Mein Kampf in Arabic. That was the aspiration of it. That's what Hamas is. People told me, yes, but they don't operate as, of course not, because we won't let them. They had a chance of 24 hours. Hamas had a chance to show the world in October 7, 2023, how they really operate. I think that they delivered. The level of barbarism and savagery, that's ISIS. But ISIS was the outcome of Hamas's ideas. Same ideology, same MO. They had a chance for only 24 hours to show the world how they behave. I think that the world begins to understand what are we dealing with. So we speak about an organization which is affiliated to the Muslim Brotherhood, outlawed in Egypt, outlawed in Jordan. Most Arab countries consider the Muslim Brotherhood an enemy. They only come together to show solidarity when it comes to Hamas against Israel. They will not tolerate that in their countries, only when it comes to the Gaza area. Saudi Arabia, they hate Hamas. Hamas is a source of instability in the area. It wants to destroy those nations to create a Muslim caliphate. So it's an interest of the whole region, but I can't say it loud and clear. You need to show solidarity, otherwise the mobs, the streets, will be on fire. So behind closed doors, we are requested by the Arab countries, finish the job. We want you to destroy Hamas. They can't say it loud and clear. So kind of an ambiguous approach, as you understand, about what countries really need and what countries are willing to express. We speak about a very brutal, so to speak, way of life. Hamas controls with iron fist everything that happens in Gaza. They will not tolerate any kind of opposition, obviously. There are no elections since 2006, surprise, surprise. We don't speak about democracy. We speak about world jihad. That's the agenda. And they are exploiting all the resources, including human lives. Money was offered by the whole world. It wasn't used for the well-being of the people. It was used to dig tunnels and to buy weapons, to develop more equipment, which is used by terror. So the money that was given, the world said, where's the money going to? And when understood that the money is not going to help the Palestinians, they stopped the donations. And who stepped in? Qatar. Because Qatar is indeed the mastermind behind the story. Qatar wants to export radical Islam, and they do. And we see it not just in the universities. You see that all around Europe. The money is coming from Qatar. The ideology is definitely Iranian. And the master plan is Iranian. There's a cooperation there. And you cannot hide it anymore. And Qatar begins to understand. They may have a major problem. The world may be slow to respond, but the world are not idiots. They know extremely well who is behind the plan. So things are going to change in the region as a result of what we see now. The MO of Hamas, as I said earlier, they are using their civilians the first line of defense. That's not how freedom fighters behave. They're willing to sacrifice all the population of Gaza, as they stated loud and clear, just to kill Jews. It's not the state of Israel, it's the Jews. Let me refer you to a very famous speech given by the Grand Mufti, who was in Berlin, the Second World War, friends of Hitler, and broadcasted on Nazi radio every day. And he said the following, the 1st of March 1944, kill the Jews anywhere you can. That's the will of Allah, that's the will of the Prophet, and that's the will of history. Because today people say, there's no problem with the Jews. The problem is the state of Israel. Nonsense. When it comes to world jihad, the problem is the Jews and the Christians. Make no mistakes, you're part of it. When you speak about politics, the Palestinian state, let's talk. When it comes to religion, there's no room for a negotiation. That's where we are right now. And we begin to understand. Please read Article 13 from the Charter of Hamas. Gives you an idea, at least, about what these people believe in. And then you understand that there's not much room for negotiations if that's your position and that's how you try to handle your affairs. And if you go to Article 28, I think it says basically everything. The Muslim mindset will never accept the existence of a Jewish state or Jewish presence in the land called Israel. Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the PLO, said once, in the future Palestine, Jews will not be permitted to live. It will be Jew-free. Jew-free is a Nazi term. And the whole world was not that bothered by that. So we accommodate 2 million Arab Palestinians, all right? But in the future Palestine, not a single Jew will be permitted to live? How come? It's not an Israeli-Palestinian issue. It's a Muslim-Jewish, Muslim-Christian issue. The world begins to understand. So speaking about Hamas, you begin to understand what are these people and how do they act and how do they conducting their affairs. Israel is willing to give working permissions. 18,000 Palestinians come from Gaza to work in Israel. Sometimes Hamas is bombing the border crossing because they don't like that. Israel sends supplies into Gaza. If we control the supplies and Hamas doesn't steal it from the people, they will bomb the trucks as well. You see what happens now with humanitarian aid. As the trucks are crossing the line, somebody shows up, shoots at everybody, hijacks the truck. People do not enjoy that aid that the world is sending. Hamas does. By the way, they offer it for money. They seize everything and they sell it in black market. That's how they make the money now. The food is given for free, right? The world is not charging for this humanitarian aid. So Hamas very cleverly, they steal everything and they offer it for money. Israel is offering medical care to Palestinians from Gaza. If you have a need and you have the paperwork, you can come and seek medical attention in Israel's hospitals. Hamas doesn't like that because these people may go to a hospital to see the Jews do not have long ears and horns and a curly tail. And then what we are going to do. But when it comes to the leaders, the wife of Ismail Haniyeh, the prime leader, was treated in a hospital in Israel. It was top secret. They're not idiots. So you speak about freedom fighters? Who do you care for if that's how you treat your people? We don't speak about freedom fighters, and one was asked the other day, Hamas member, how come you dug all those tunnels 400 miles and you don't let the people take shelter in the tunnels? The answer was, these people we don't care about. These are just for the freedom fighters. They can die. He said it loud and clear. So freedom fighters, for whom freedom you're fighting for exactly, if that's how you sacrifice your own population. Let me skip that for a minute and just go to this slide. You see the pictures of the heroes. Number one, Mahmoud Abbas, president, head of the PLO, lost the elections, refused to abdicate back at the time, 87 years old. He refuses to name his heir. He's going to step down sooner, maybe die, and without naming your heir. Since we speak about a tribal society, and every tribe and clan is armed to their teeth, guess what will happen? All hell will be breaking loose. We have no surprises. That's what's going to happen. on the Hamas side, and they are bitter enemies, all right? Yahya Sinwar is the commander on the ground. We didn't hear from him for a long time. He's hiding in tunnels, surrounded by hostages, no doubt. And then we have two gentlemen who are in Qatar, enjoying a great meal as we speak, and go to the jacuzzi later on. They make the decisions. Israel made a statement. All these are legitimate targets. We'll find them, we'll kill them. Israel has the right to take care about our enemies, and we are going to. The head of the Israeli equivalent to the FBI said the other day, every Palestinian mother should know, if her son participated in the October 7th massacre, she can start mourning. We'll find her son, we'll kill her son. Gloves are off. You don't need to apologize anymore. We don't ask for permission. It's time. If we had done that 20 years ago, as we should have, we would save a lot of problems. We tried, and we tried, and we tried. That's it. We are going to find the last Hamas terrorist. We're going to make sure that he's no longer functioning. Takes time. You go from room to room, from house to house. The enemy is 360 and 360 because most of them are hiding in tunnels. That's the nature of the conflict. But for the first time ever, we are so determined. This was not working. Israel, only Israel, initiated 7 peace processes, always to be turned down by the Palestinians without even presenting a counteroffer. Usually, you make an offer, and you wait for the other party to set a counter and start negotiating. No. It was never a two-state solution. It was one-state solution, us or them. If that's a choice, I'm sorry, it's us. Whatever happens, we have such solidarity in the country to understand. We tried and we tried. We were very generous. We projected our image to think that we can deal with them. It's not working. And it's a lesson not just for Israel. It's a lesson to the, let's call it the free world. Those principles that we are adhering to, Judeo-Christian principles, Islam does not believe in the same principles. Unfortunately, there is an enemy. And the enemy has an address and has a face. And we know how to find them. We'll find them. And that's what we are engaged in for the last almost 6 months. Since Hamas gained the Gaza area, Israel had a blockade around Gaza, tried to see what goes in, and everything is coming through our territory. As I said, the Egyptians are not interested. So we are doing that for them. The 18,000 Gazans that come and work in Israel, we pay them salaries, and the taxes we are charging, we are transferring by bank to the Palestinian autonomy. Some of it goes to Hamas. Crazy, I agree. We don't want to see people starving on the other side. We want to support the good guys. Are there good guys in Gaza? I don't know. Now we're a little more clever and more realistic than we were even half a year ago. And since the world saw there was a blockade, an uproar started. The Gazans are starving to death. Israel is brutal. Well, we invited some journalists from Egypt to come and give their report about how Gaza looks like in 2010. Please take a minute and read the report. Life wasn't that bad. It was much better than in Egypt. So once you read that, so just a minute now, there is more to the story. So it eased some of the pressure from Israel when they had those reports coming from the Egyptian press about what happens in Gaza. And through all that time, this was happening. We understood that they are digging tunnels. We had no clue how much efforts were dedicated, and they did a great job in deceiving us. 400 miles of tunnels, that's more than in the London Tube. We speak about an endless number of tunnels. Some will be a 4-lane roads. You can drive a car through. People go from place to place. We now begin to understand what is the amount of tunnels and weapons. 80% of the houses in Gaza, something was found to connect them to warfare. Ammunition, shafts leading down to the main tunnel system, a lot of weapons, standard weapons, not locally made. Everything came in from Egypt. With Egypt's knowledge, Egyptian officers took a cut. It was a business, good for everybody. So why stop? They're going to use it against Israel, not against us. Big mistake, by the way. They use it against Egypt as well. So that's what happened under our noses without fully noticing what is it that is growing under our feet. And Israel is to be blamed also for making one big mistake. And let me say a word about Israel's policy. I do know that Mr. Netanyahu is a very prominent politician, quite respected by many Americans who are pro-Israel, and indeed holding the position for 16 years. 16 years, he was the one behind a certain policy. The policy was, which is a legitimate policy, and even worked for a while, that Israel should try to make peace with the Arab countries first, and after we make peace with them, they will press on the Palestinians so hard that the Palestinians will have to capitulate, because Israel's ambition is to be accepted by the Middle Eastern countries, to be part of the Middle East, to live in peace with our neighbors. And the idea was that first you deal with the Palestinians, and when you resolve your problems, the whole Arab world will be more than happy to accommodate you. And Mr. Netanyahu said, no, we're not going to talk to them. We're going to ignore them completely. We're going to speak to the Arab countries, and they will introduce pressure on the Palestinians. Big mistake. You do not understand the level of humiliation that we experienced in October 7th. You have no clue the pain. Somebody is to be blamed. If you're the prime minister, you are responsible. By the way, politicians in my country, not even one was willing to take responsibility. Not even one. It's not my fault, it's his fault. The army didn't tell me, this one wasn't working, the satellite was shut down. It's pathetic, it's ridiculous. Army personnel came forward the following day. The chief of general staff, I'd failed. My job was to protect the country, I had failed. Let me win the war, I'll go home. I wish we could hear that from our leaders. Nobody says a word. That's poor leadership. We demand answers. We demand answers. And when the war will be over, I'm sorry to say, there will be a lot of unrest in Israel. We'll take to the streets. Governments that had failed big time should not keep holding power. So right now, there is a lot of opposition, but right now there is a war. Let's finish the war. This war can go on and on for a long time. And maybe it's time for elections in the country. I'm not even expressing my opinion. I would say that 80% of Israelis are in that mood right now. Something was wrong. Somebody has to pay the price. Somebody has to be responsible, and politicians are not willing to even consider, to admit about a mistake, maybe misjudging. Because once you say, and he said it many times, Hamas is an asset, because by supporting Hamas will undermine the position of the PLO, and they will never be united. We supported Hamas. Huge mistake. Money was coming into the Gaza Strip with briefcases, $30 million every month to pay Palestinian officials. The big money came in secretly. That was done with Israel's consent. The clever idea was, we're going to keep them divided, we'll divide and conquer, just like Rome did. It's going to last forever. It did not. It was a colossal failure. Now we know. And meanwhile, Hamas was working. Our main concern was they're going to dig tunnels under the borderline, and we'll find them popping into an Israeli community to take hostages, etc. So we responded in a way that every modern country will respond. We used technology, and we built an amazing fence with lots of sensors and satellites and army troops guarding it, and a steel wall that goes about 60 feet on the ground to the water table. You cannot go deeper because it will be flooded, and we simply relied on technology. We'll have an alert, we'll have an early warning, it's going to work. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't working. Because once you have a certain concept that Hamas is an asset, you don't even try to understand what you see in front of your very eyes. Soldiers were reporting day by day. We see them preparing, we see them working, we see what they plan. It stops someplace halfway up the chain of command because the politicians had an idea. Hamas is an asset. They'll have so much to lose if they attack us, they will never do that. That's a tragedy. If it was a surprise, say, okay, they fooled us, and they did. But the fact is that we saw what's going on. It just stopped someplace in the level of the politicians to say, just a minute now, we have an understanding. We created a situation that Hamas has a lot to lose. They send people to work in Israel. They want to be recognized as a government. We'll give that semi-recognition. Why would they attack us? Because they don't care about anything except for killing Jews. Now we know. So Hamas and Palestinians are not coming to work in Israel anymore. That's it. You will starve to death. I'm sorry, not my problem. Because you know who led the attack in October 7th, 2023? Those people that we fed their families. They came in to spy on us. They had lists of names. They knew exactly what doors to knock on. Because you work in a kibbutz, a community. You know where the grocery shop is at. You know where the pharmacy, where the small clinic, where the armory is at. And you know who are the people, the key people. The people that we fed bit the hand that fed them. They are not coming to work anymore. That's it. There's a problem, let the world feed them. Let the Egyptians feed them, not us. It was a very painful wake-up call. But that's where we are right now. Egyptians, as I mentioned earlier, that we thought to be allies are definitely not allies, and everything came in through Egypt. The question is, how is it that we're so deceived by Hamas? I'm going to skip this one with your permission. There was a line that you saw earlier, and there was a perimeter. About 100 yards from the fence. If anybody comes closer, they knew we are going to open fire. This is a no man's land. And that was the plan. So let's say that one day a little boy is kicking a ball, and the ball falls behind that line, and he just goes to retrieve his ball. What will you do? Kill the kid? Of course not. And the following day, a shepherd goes by, and he has 20 sheep, and 5 of them are going astray very close to the fence. And the shepherd simply goes to retrieve his sheep. Are you going to kill the sheep or the man? Of course not. And before not too long, tens of thousands of them, peaceful protesters, are rolling burning tires at the fence, creating a smoke screen. And in that smoke screen, some of them are crawling carefully to put these bombs on the fence. They did a great job deceiving us. I'm not complaining against that. I'm complaining about being too merciful, because when this will be over, there will be another line. And then if a butterfly is crossing the line, we'll be shut down. That's how you learn, right? After losing more than 1,400 civilians, we have the right to do that. A little too late, but that was our lesson. October 7th, I keep telling the story, 6:30 a.m., I'm walking the dog. All right, that's my job, walk the dog. My daughter is working for Israeli TV. My phone rings, it's my daughter. She never calls me 6:30, why would she? Dad, where are you at? Walking the dog. Go quickly back home to the bomb shelter. I said, what happened? 2,000 rockets are fired at your direction. That's how I knew about what was going on. And in a very short time, they were able to break through the fences. The bombs were there. All they had to do is just detonate them. And bulldozers were collapsing the whole line. They came in 3 waves, and they were able to go quite deeper into Israel's territory. The question that we are bothered with, and we'll have to fully investigate that, where was the army? How come the army responded so poorly? How many people were deployed? It was a holiday, by the way, so usually the army is not that active in a holiday. The last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, we call it Simchat Torah, the joy of the Torah. We finish reading a cycle of the Torah, the books of Moses, every year. The last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. And in the synagogue, they read the last verse from Deuteronomy and the first verse from Genesis. Another cycle was completed, and people take to the streets carrying Torah scrolls and dancing and singing the joy of the Torah. That was the date they wanted to attack, and they did. And of course, October 6th reminded them of the Yom Kippur War, so maybe the date was very carefully chosen. They broke through in 22 different places. Their targets were Israeli communities, army bases, and unfortunately, a music festival. 4,000 Israeli kids were simply singing and dancing, and 369 were butchered and murdered and set on fire and taken hostages. We lost that day close to 1,400 people. And Hamas's heroes, quote unquote, came in 3 waves. The third wave was the most intriguing one. People from Gaza, just simple, good Gazans, that heard that the walls are breached. They took kitchen knives and scissors and axes and crossed into our communities to murder and to kill and to steal. Anything they could carry. We intercepted a phone call. A Palestinian terrorist is calling his father using a cell phone he took from a dead Israeli woman. Dad, your son is a hero. I'm using a phone that I took from an Israeli girl. I murdered her and her husband and 8 others. And the dad is in tears. Keep killing my son. Keep killing. I'm so proud of you. I wish I could be with you. Your mother is so proud. Who speaks like that? Who educates their children like that? It wasn't a military operation. It was killing for the sake of killing. We speak about raping. Who will take a baby into an oven and turn the oven on? You tell me. Who behaves like that? It's not an act of war. It's an act of savagery. And then set everything on fire. Rescue workers told us that they came to this festival area and they could see from a distance that something was burning, a big fire, and they did not know what was burning. They came a little closer, and they did not understand. Something was fueling the fire. They came close enough, they understood these are dead bodies. About 200 dead bodies were piled up and set on fire. Do you understand the problem to try to extract any DNA from the ashes? We need to know the identity of the people that were killed. You know what happens if you ask an archaeologist to use the big sieve that they're using to sift through ancient stuff, to find every piece of bone, every piece of skin, a tooth or something, to give you a chance to try to identify who are the people that are missing. Until today, 6 months almost later, we still have one woman missing. We have no idea what happened to her. We didn't find any trace of DNA, not in blood and not in hair, absolutely nothing. We do not know if she is on the list of people or hostages because Hamas will not provide any information. We still have one that is just missing, disappeared. So again, it's another aspect of the story that usually is not really told. As you can tell, they went deep enough and they came very close to the town of Ofakim. Ofakim was attacked. The plan was to go to Beersheba, but they didn't go that deep. Took us a while to get our act together and to respond. And once we did, you can't stop us. The first 24 hours were chaotic. The army wasn't functioning. The government doesn't function, not even today, by the way. We speak about a total shock and humiliation. The army is always the first one to recover, and we did quite quickly. And we struck back, and today Gaza is in Israeli hands. The one thing that we're not taking yet is the town of Rafah, which is on the Egyptian border. We'll have to take it because we want to control those tunnels. If Egypt controls the tunnels, the flow of weapons will keep coming. And therefore, we need to make sure that we control that border area. And today, there are 1.5 million people hiding or taking shelter in Gaza, in Rafah. So we'll have to find a way to evacuate them peacefully if possible. Rafah will be taken. And many refugees will flee to Egypt. That's Egypt's problem. If they had cooperated 20 years ago, maybe it would not have happened, but they didn't. So they should bear the consequences today of their own action. And that's most likely another part of the tragedy of the war. You do see this line of cars over there. This was the parking area of the people that came to celebrate. Everything went on fire. It's amazing. Let me show you a short video. There is a little audio here, but it's not important, and you won't be able to hear. Oh, yes, you will be able to hear because I'm connected. This is about a week after the attack in Kibbutz Be'eri that was hit the hardest. Out of a community of 1,000 people, 132 were either killed or kidnapped as hostages. They lost 10% of their community, and the whole community was gone, basically. Some images from Kibbutz Be'eri, the kibbutz that was hit the hardest from the murderous attack of Hamas. Until 2 weeks ago, happy families used to live here. This was a house with children playing out on the green grass. It was beautiful, it was a little paradise, and that's what was left of it now. Now take that and multiply that in a couple of hundreds. That's how many of these communities, which is called the Gaza envelope, look like. What about the hostages? Well, there was a problem within Israel as well. The way that the cabinet declared the objectives of the war is to utterly destroy Hamas and to free the hostages. It looks like these two objectives are contradicting one way or the other. We know for a fact that many of them will be used as human shields to protect the heads of Hamas. We have no illusion about that. Is it possible to free them so all of them come back home alive? We know that 34 people are confirmed to be dead. Maybe not realistic, but this is our obligation as a country. These are Israelis, and the only reason to have a state is to have a safe place for the Jewish people. And we will fail our mission if we don't try to do whatever we can to bring those people home. And that can be by using diplomacy, by using politics. we won't hesitate to sacrifice our own soldiers. It was a chance to take those people back home safely. Because you need to understand that their condition is basically determining even the acts of war. If we have a clear target and we know that somebody very important is hiding there, but we suspect that maybe the hostages will call off the operation. And some of them were killed by friendly fire already. So this is the most painful issue. Armies don't know how to fight such a war. And we are quite confused about what is the right thing to do. So we'll see. We can maybe free some others by negotiations, but it's not realistic to believe that all of them will come home safely. But Israel is divided. We are full solidarity about the objectives of the war. It's a big question. What's more important? To destroy Hamas completely or to free the hostages? There was no consensus in Israel regarding that issue. But you do understand the painful issue that we are dealing with. You should see the families. You should see the parents and the children and the spouses. They are in a state of shock, and it looks like the country is not fully supportive, and that's politics involved as well. That will be the most painful issue on the table. And once again, to show the pictures of some of them, we have a man by the name of Oded Lifshitz, 83 years old, that his life mission, he lived in a kibbutz right on the Gaza envelope. His life mission was to drive every morning to the border crossing and to check with local Palestinians that were going to the hospital, do you need a ride? And he will take them to the hospital, wait with them until it's over, bring them back to the border crossing. He was a target. He was the first one to be kidnapped, and I have no doubt in my mind, somebody that he helped driving was the one that marked his house. And these guys are in tunnels for nearly 5 months. No sunlight. Think about nutrition. Think about their condition. We don't want to think about that. So what Israel is facing is more than just a war. We face something quite barbaric. Look at Kfir Bibas and his brother Ariel. These are the 2 missing kids. He should be now about 1 year and 4 months old. Enemy of Islam, as you understand. He is a hostage in Gaza. Who will take a baby hostage? His brother Ariel, 4 years old. These 2 are missing. All right? So when you're praying, please pray for the hostages as well. It's a humanitarian issue more than just food for Gaza, and I'm not underestimating the need for food for Gaza. So that will be the biggest challenge, and you need to understand that we take it very personally. It's very immediate. We all know people that were either kidnapped or families who died, etc. And therefore, we are facing something new. The level of solidarity is absolutely amazing, at least for a while it was. We are coming out from a big crisis as a society. The government tried to lead a judicial kind of revolution or change in our system, and many people took to the streets. The war stopped all of that, and we do show a lot of solidarity in the Israeli society. Just one example, when the war started, by the way, every Israeli that was around the world, touring, working, they tried to get on the first plane, come back home to fight for the country. I'm not in the reserves anymore, but I used to be quite many years. And I can tell you that the way that we plan, when the army goes to war, you have enough equipment for 80% of the soldiers on your list. Because people are not going to show up. People are sick, ill, not in the country. 120% of the people showed up. There was a shortage of everything. It's a good sign. It's a good sign. People that left Israel 20 years ago to work in Silicon Valley, the country needed them. The Jewish people were in danger. They would leave everything. They'll go back home to risk their lives to fight for the country. It's a good sign. It's a good sign, quite encouraging. But again, I'm sorry for the circumstances, but every now and then you need to know that people are still committed and people are motivated. And when things get worse, they're always there to help, to assist. It's not easy to be Jewish or to be an Israeli. There's a price to pay. We are proud to pay the price. And although we are not a religious nation, so to speak, part of the motivation is that we know why we are there. Because God keeps his promises. And we are there to witness the rebirth of a Jewish state. It's awesome. I do not take it for granted. And that's part of the motivation. So the solidarity is something that we always keep in mind. Israel's response, we send our army in. You can't stop us. If you're determined to do something, we will accomplish our goal. We clear the northern parts. We advise people to leave the area safely. We provided a safe corridor. Most of the Palestinians are around the area of Rafah. We took the northern part of Gaza. The next step will be to take the town of Rafah. There'll be 2 columns, almost no doubt, one will come from Israel's territory. We want to control this line because under this line there are tens of tunnels that carry stuff into Gaza. It has to be in our hands. That's the condition of Gaza City today. Although we speak about Gaza, it's not the only part of the story. There is an outer circle as well, and doesn't get that much attention. Number 1, Lebanon. The story of Lebanon, it's a proxy of Iran called Hezbollah, deployed in Lebanon, and there is a war going on. It's very static. There are no maneuvers, but every day, rocket fire from Lebanon, we retaliate. About 60,000 Israelis were evacuated. We have Israelis, refugees in Israel. Because the homes take direct fire, Israel is not responding yet in Lebanon. We want to finish with Gaza. Unfortunately, diplomacy is not going to work. The next step, within weeks, maybe a month, we will have to attack South Lebanon to get rid of Hezbollah as well, because they say it loud and clear. We'll not stop until we kill all the Jews. So it looks like the next line should be about 15 miles away from a border, and this place has to be clear of Hezbollah rockets and Hezbollah personnel. They're not going to do that willingly. We'll make them. It just takes some time. And as I said, I'm sorry for the tone and sorry for the message. We tried everything. Nothing is working. The only thing, unfortunately, is to do that by force. The West Bank is also a place which is not very quiet. I'm just going to skip there to show you the outer circle. We speak about Iran deeply involved, supporting proxies in Syrian territory, in Jordan, in Lebanon, obviously, and Houthis from Yemen. What exactly they have to do, I'm not even sure. In Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the world, 80% of the population illiterate, yet they have ballistic missiles. They were not manufactured in Yemen. It's all coming from Iran. And they fire at Israel, 1,000 miles away. Today, the whole world got together, led by the US of A, and there was a whole flotilla, which is deployed in the Red Sea, and they intercept all these rockets flying toward Israel. Because the Houthis said every ship that's on the way to the Suez Canal and carries commodities to Israel, how can you even tell, is a legitimate target? Which means that today, ship companies will have to circle the whole continent of Africa just to get to Europe. Prices will rise, and the whole world economy is going to take a hit. So as I said, it's not a local problem. It is indeed a global issue. That's why the world is involved, because it is indeed a global issue. We have good ways to protect ourselves. We speak about weapons developed in Israel, the Iron Dome, very famous, American money, our technology. Same with David Sling and the Arrow, which was operational for the first time. The Arrow is guaranteeing to intercept ballistic missiles, which means out of the atmosphere. Here is an interesting comment for you, if I may. Because of the Russian-Ukrainian war, Western Europe is freaking out. You need to understand that. Western European countries don't have armies. Almost air forces, yes, almost no armies. When President Biden was asking the German Chancellor to send some help to the Ukraine, the answer was, I only have 2 tank divisions. Germany, 2 tank. If I'm going to give one, what will protect Germany? That was the mindset. That's it. So Europe is kind of freaking out. And the weapon industry is booming. Everybody wants to get weapons. Whose weapons? Israeli weapons. Here is an irony of history for you. Germany just purchased 5 batteries of the Arrow. Jewish weapons are going to protect German territory 80 years after the Holocaust. And not just Germany, Britain and Spain and all the others. They cannot protect themselves, and they are freaking out from Putin because Putin said loud and clear, if we're going to lose that war, I'll use my nuclear weapons. All right? So we are developing those, they're ready and operational, and suddenly the whole world is interested in buying weapons from Israel because of our peculiar condition. We started with this, let's end with this, because I owe you 6 minutes now. It's 7:20. And once again, I apologize for the unpleasant tone here, but I think that you have to know the story. And as I said, don't trust anything I shared with you. Please go and check. I do want to end this for now by playing a song. The song was videoed in the theater of Caesarea. Some of you have been there. 1,000 Israeli musicians and some of the hostages' families got together to sing a song, an old Israeli song, which today is getting very close to the level of a national anthem. It has subtitles in English, and I think that you will be impressed. I can't say really enjoy, but you will understand the message behind that song. And then, as I understand from Pastor Len, we'll take questions, and I need to leave at 2 a.m. Until then, I'm yours. Hey, Josh, can we? Let's see if it works. Thank you, sir. Well, it's easy for us, my wife and myself, to get emotional and hard not to have tears in your eyes. You don't understand, a small country, and we all know each other, and this is always has this kind of impact. Thank you for your attention, and I'm more than happy to ask questions, or answer questions, I'm sorry, if anybody has one. Pastor Len?
We'll go ahead. We've got the microphones. If you want to just raise your hand, Josh and I are here. We'll come around. You can just ask your question. I see a hand over here. Josh, you got this one pretty good? Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah? Okay, there we go. Thank you.
I had a question about when you said that first of all, I'm really sorry for everything you're going through.
Yes.
We do really feel for you, and I'm very sorry about all of this. The question was, when Hamas was elected, you said, when they were first elected, was that a very fair election, or do you think there was strong arming involved, that the people really didn't have the choice, or how could they be elected?
Well, the idea was it was supposed to be a test case, and the US policy was, and once again, I'm not criticizing, they wanted to show the world that Arabs can live in democracy. The US did not understand or did not refuse to understand that some people do not understand democracy, are not interested in democracy, and since we see the world in our own image, we project our image around the world and think that everybody has the same ideas. The plan was we have to prove everybody that Arabs can live in democracy. And the point is that there are no Arab democracies. There used to be one called Lebanon, which is in total devastation because of the system over there. So thousands of inspectors came from Europe, and they were sitting, watching the ballots, and made sure that everything is legit, and people are voting. The whole world media it was a celebration to show the world that Arabs can vote and live in peace and elect democratic people. The people had spoken. It worked. That was the will of the people. They took a poll about a month ago in the West Bank. Who is supporting Hamas's actions from October 7th? 82% of the Palestinians in the West Bank are for that plan. So yes, as kosher as it was, if I can say kosher in that context, the elections were a celebration for democracy. And that was the outcome, and we warned them. It may happen. It's going to change everything, and it did.
Yes, I wondered, after living in Israel for a while, I did see the harmony between the Arab Israelis and the Israelis. They were really gracious, say, on many of the restaurants we went to and grocery stores. And I saw a harmony there that I never expected when I first went there. But now I'm wondering, the Israeli leadership that's in power now, do you see leaders that are showing promise to resolve? Or my concern is, who gets voted in? Will they just surrender, or or do we have leaders that really want to win this war in Israel?
I can't think about a single leader who doesn't want to win that. The question is, what is the right thing to do? And some will say that intensify the pressure on Hamas, that will be the way to release the hostages. And some will say, no, we need to do whatever possible to release them first, and then there was enough time to crush Hamas. The question is, why would Hamas be interested in such a deal? If they are replacing all the hostages, it's very clear what will happen. They need to keep some of them, it's an asset, but among Israeli leaders, everybody has one opinion, everybody. That's why we formed a unity government, which was almost impossible, because we all have the same plan. Hamas will be destroyed. Now some telling me, listen, it's an idea, how can you destroy an idea? I agree. But Nazi Germany was defeated. Nazism is still, unfortunately, very much out there. We want to make sure that Hamas loses its capability to be a government or to be an armed militia. Hamas will not control Gaza ever again as a government. Can you get rid of the ideas? Well, the world started or tried for more than 1,000 years to try to eradicate radical Islam, not really working. So that will be our goal. And the biggest question, what will happen tomorrow? Who is going to rule Gaza? Nobody wants Gaza. Not the PLO, not the EU, not Egypt, definitely not the US of A, even not to sponsor the whole thing. What will happen in Gaza? Israel doesn't want to occupy Gaza. So this is a big problem. Who is going to control Gaza when this operation is over? It looks like total chaos. And if you understand that the Palestinian mindset or the way of life is based on the clan and the tribe and the family, that's gangs basically. That's how they operate in the West Bank as well. That's a big question. And that's politics. So to win the war is easy. The question is what will happen after that politically. Israel is excellent in winning wars, followed by political failures. And that's a big problem.
Follow-up question to that. Does Israel, and do you know, do they have a good strategic plan on how to execute a policy, media, to show that Hamas is bad? Because obviously in the United States you said, oh, look at the poor Gazans. But have they considered, sat down and said, hey, this is how we need to approach the whole world and show the true situation going on? It doesn't seem that way.
Yeah. Well, Israel is a small country, and we're not known to be very good in explaining ourselves. You speak about 1.5 billion Muslims, all recruited for the job. So even the numbers are not in our favor, how many people speak for Israel. We do whatever we can. The Israeli government edited a film of 47 minutes, which is taken from Hamas's GoPro cameras that shows the atrocities. All right, it was broadcasted in parliaments around the world. It's so horrible they decided not to show it to people because your stomach won't stand it, okay? And there's a limit how much you can do. And yes, the world's attention goes to the poor Gazans. And again, what can you do? The world has a short memory. That's why I said we do not consider anything anymore. We don't want to please anybody. We don't need permission from anybody. We are going to take our enemies out. And the way to do that is only one way, unfortunately. It will take time. It won't be easy. BBC, for example, had to apologize 3 or 4 times for misbroadcasting news from Gaza. By the way, just so that you would know, the only news channel that has boots on the ground in Gaza is Al Jazeera. Because you listen to the messages and you're positive somebody saw that with their very eyes. It was a professional journalist that reports from Gaza. Nonsense. Everything is based on Hamas sources. Who will report about an ambulance that was attacked by the Israeli Air Force? By the way, inside 5 terrorists. Who will give you the report? The ambulance driver. But when you watch it on TV, it looks like the people in the studio have seen that with their very eyes, not even once. All the information is controlled by Hamas, and they know what they're doing. They will not let journalists into the Gaza area, and that's the main reason. Reports from Gaza will be devastating, not just for Israel, for Hamas as well. The famous El Ahli hospital story, some of you may remember. They fired a rocket. Within 3 minutes, BBC said 500 people. How can you count 500 dead bodies in 3 minutes? And then you intercept this phone call of 2 Palestinians that the rocket that was fired at the hospital, it's you. No, yes, it's you. It was a malfunction. And then the whole world has to apologize. Who hears the apology? Nobody. Did you know that 3,000 rockets that Hamas fired fell in the Gaza area? They malfunctioned. Who reports about that? Are the good people in Gaza? That's a good question, by the way. I don't know. But when you see the dead body of a naked Israeli girl carried on a golf cart through Gaza, and everybody is spitting on it and beats her up, are the good people in Gaza? When Jews are being murdered, they give candies out in the streets and everybody's happy. It's a celebration. Are the good people in Gaza? I want to see them. I didn't see one that will say, hey, we hate Hamas. Well, not they will, of course, under the pressure. Not even one. No opposition. Nobody speaks against Hamas. So who are the legitimate targets? Who are the people that we're supposed to go after? If you fire a rocket from a kindergarten, is it a legitimate target to take, yes or no? I think it is. And so forth and so forth. How to terror activities. And it's not guerrilla, it's terror. Countries, democracies do not know how to fight against terror. We have to invent the system and the world is going to learn. What we are doing in the tunnels, no army ever fought on the ground. There was no need, now there is one. Using robots and using drones and using dogs, we are learning as we're making progress. The whole world will come to study how to do it right. No army ever fought such a warfare. I have to tell you, we rose a generation of lions. We speak about very courageous youngsters. You always criticize the next generation. TikTok generation, what do they know? Ooh, I'm telling you, they're better than we are. And I'm proud to say that. The motivation is sky high. They're risking their lives to save Israelis. That's what I expect from our army.
I've got a couple of questions now. The first one, please tell me you're doing something to disable the tunnels that exist.
Well, we're doing quite a lot. Number one, you need to find them. You need to find them and to map them. And once you do, there are a few ways to do that, and that's why it takes such a long time. Because they're all connected somehow, and you want to spare the lives of the hostages, and usually you will send a dog inside the tunnel system, and the dog has a camera, and if the dog is not coming back, that means that somebody is in there, because if there is somebody in there, the dog will attack him. We send robots inside, we send small drones. Did you see a drone about the size of a mosquito that flies in a tunnel? No army knows how to do that. So the tunnels are being taken out one after the other, and when we find them, clear them, we stuff them with TNT, we blow them up. So if you have a tunnel that goes under a living quarter, and you stuff it with 10 tons of TNT, guess what will happen to the neighborhood above the tunnel? Thank you. Yes, but again, we spoke about maybe flooding the tunnels, not realistic, but there was a way to try to do that. Again, the hostages are a key consideration. We're going very carefully. And that's why it takes such a long time. It can take as long as it takes. We will finish the job.
Okay, you mentioned a now enforced DMZ to speak of. Is this just you speaking, or is this actual policy?
No, that's official policy, and they started to prepare that already. The question is, are you going to keep your own orders when the time comes? Because I really hate to think that one of the soldiers in my army sees in front of him a little kid that violates every rule in the book, and he decides to put the axe on and to kill him. It may come to that. And the question is, what will be the rules of engagement? And I'm telling you, if you're getting an order to a soldier to take out an innocent kid, you may be court-martialed. It's illegal by our standards. And that's part of the frustration. How do you try to be a democracy and to respect human lives, knowing that your gestures may lead to a vicious attack years later? That's the dilemma of every democracy. How to do that? I don't want to compromise our principles. And the principles are telling us you don't shoot at innocent civilians. The question is, who is innocent? Go figure. You share my frustration. In fact, everybody's frustration.
One question. Is it true that in Israel they're drilling for oil?
I'm sorry?
In Israel, are they drilling for oil?
Drilling for oil? Not recently. I mean, we found a huge gas reservoir in the Mediterranean Sea about 10 years ago, and that will be most of the power used in the country. That was the question, right? Drilling for oil. No, we have the gas now, and part of it is going to be exported to Europe because once again, Mr. Putin refuses to sell gas to the Europeans, and next winter they may freeze to death because that's the main source of energy. Israel is going to be part of the energy market. We build a pipeline as we speak that will go under the Mediterranean, through the Mediterranean Sea to Italy, about 2,000 miles long, in order to bypass Turkey and some other countries. And we're going to export some of our gas to Western Europe as well. So most of the power is not used by oil anymore. Most of the power is gas. That's what we are using to fuel the country now. Natural gas.
Who do we listen to find out the truth? I know our media is very biased. And Amir Safari, I say his name wrong, reports on a lot. And there's the Israel station on TV. But where can we find out the truth of what's really going on?
What is the truth, huh? I think that the Israeli media will be, of course, they try to be a little more objective. Jerusalem Post can be a decent one, J-Post. They do have an English edition as well. They accuse to be a little too liberal every now and then. I-24, another English-speaking Israeli channel, that will be okay as well. But once again, everybody has a narrative and an agenda. Amir Tzorfati, who I know very well, a friend for many years, he's coming more from the biblical approach, and it's not really a news media, although he's operating like a news channel recently, but again, he doesn't have any inside information either. So that's an opinion, all right? Keep in mind, speak about opinions. Israeli spokespeople do make the declarations. You go to the official website of the IDF. We try to be reliable. That's why we are losing all the time. Because you can spread a rumor so easily, Israel cannot allow itself to just say something which is not the absolute truth. And it takes time to check. So we're always behind. Always behind. Somebody says something, takes us half a day to respond after we are checking. Because we don't want to be those that mislead everything. And if you're first one out there, you win. Because even if the truth is being told later on, who cares? The lie usually wins. I think that Mark Twain said many years ago that when the lie is halfway around the world, the truth is putting his shoes on. That's the nature of it, especially in the modern world. Are there some questions here? He's coming. Pastor Len is coming. I'm sorry you have to.
I'm interested in knowing the South America. I understand, was it the president of Peru, Argentina that came along, Israel, I'm not sure which country. Argentina. And what kind of support, where is their position, anything, money, army, anything for Israel?
Argentina is not in a position to assist Israel. Argentina is facing a real financial problem, so it's not. We need support because every country has a vote in the UN, and it's an automatic majority against Israel. 58 Muslim countries plus African countries who are not pro-Israel, they have an automatic majority in the UN. So every vote that we can have is helpful. And Argentina was sometimes unpleasant to Israel. Now it looks very friendly to Israel. So again, it's not any financial support. But everybody that will say that he's a friend of Israel, he's more welcome, right, to come and visit. And we like to have many friends.
So, heaven forbid, assuming that the support from the U.S. dries up one day, how does that affect the situation in Israel?
If the support
from the U.S. dries up politically, how does that affect the situation?
Well, that will be, I would say, almost devastating. If the support from the U.S. Will stop coming financially, as well as politically. And we do believe that presidents come and go, and so do administrations. As long as the American people, as people, are pro-Israelis, and we stand together for Judeo-Christian principles, we are content. And I think they took a poll recently about how many people in the U.S. are supporting his position, more than 80%. So right now we are dependent, financially definitely. We're getting an aid from the U.S. every year, $3 billion. Like Egypt, by the way, 1.8 goes for the army. But with this money, we can only purchase American equipment. So in a way, it's supporting the American industry as well. But again, we are thankful for that. I did not know, which was a shock to me, that the Iron Dome that we have built, the rockets, are made here in America. And we need to ask basically for congressional approval just to have a supply of rockets. So to have the radar and the launcher without having rockets, I really don't see the point. And I'm sure that that was part of the agreement that was signed. So we have some shortage, but now we're developing another system that will be based on laser. And it costs about $40,000, all right, to shoot one rocket of the Iron Dome to intercept a rocket that will cost about $80 to make. That's a Palestinian locally made rockets. We can take a chance. Once it's fired, we have a radar that within 0.1 second can calculate where the rocket is going to fall. If it's not falling in inhabited areas, it won't even bother. But if it does, we have to intercept it. All right, so this new one, which is laser-based, every pulse will cost about a dime. All right, so it's much more cost-effective. But again, the support is definitely needed, and politically as well. Security Council, we need to have the US's veto every now and then, and it's definitely a support that I hope it will not dry up. I do understand the Democratic Party. I know the progressive, why did I call them progressive? I call them regressive anyhow. Yeah, we don't understand how it works. I hope that this friendship will never end. Any other questions?
Hi.
Hello.
I have a question about that video you showed that was so moving and so beautiful. And I'd really, really like to watch it again, and I'd also like to share it. Is that, I mean, I hate YouTube, really,
Oh,
but
yeah.
if that's all I got, that's all I
YouTube,
got.
Bring Them Home, Caesarea Theater. It is what it is, moving and loud, if I may add.
That's why I'm a product of the 70s. I love loud music. And there was not even enough guitars.
Enough drums.
Right here, Ed.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing out the connection between the Jewish state and Christianity, obviously practiced worldwide. You spoke tonight about Hamas and what they've been doing. You mentioned Hezbollah out of Lebanon. You mentioned the Houthis. We've got U.S. military sinking ships in the Red Sea because the Houthis not only are launching rockets from where you pointed out in your diagrams to take out trade vessels and that affect the world, but also a lot of activity in the Red Sea. Well, it's kind of interesting. Iran uses all three of those groups worldwide, all right? And a couple months ago, Janet Yellen for the United States, and this line requires me to feel like I need to apologize to you and Israel, and here's why. Janet Yellen was talking to the world about sanctions and how much money Iran has been able to amass since the 2020 election. And she said that there were two levels of sanctions as they got into all the detail, but she said those sanctions had been maintained and in place. She had to admit she was lying. They were not held in place. Iran has amassed billions, incredible amounts of money because of change in policy in that regard. So very quickly across the United States, you read online, your newspapers, etc., it was pointed out that those sanctions are not in place, more lies that we Americans are fed by our own government. So Iran's got all this money. Well, where do you think the money came from that allowed Hamas to decide it's time to do what they've done vis-a-vis Israel? And all of a sudden, Hezbollah is acting up. You talked in our seminar about the fact that there's an expectation of a war with Lebanon vis-a-vis the proxy of Iran, Hezbollah. Where's Hezbollah getting its money? Iran. Okay, the Houthis, where do they get their money? Iran.
Yep.
So I apologize to you because a U.S. policy that has allowed them to sell oil to countries like Russia, other countries in the world where there were sanctions that prevented that for a number of years up into the 2020 election. When those policies changed, now Iran is just overflowing in money, and they have the money to support all these efforts. So if you connect the fact, as you pointed out in your presentation, that Hamas basically has one mission, and that is to kill Jews. And you also talked about Christianity, okay? You talked tonight about ISIS. I'll be done shortly. You talked about ISIS, supported by these groups. What did ISIS do in the Middle East in some of our past administrations? Didn't they destroy all of the Christian sites? All right, the churches, the sites, etc. I haven't been there, but the world says if you go to those countries now, you can't find those sites. They're rubble. They've been destroyed by these same people that are actors for Iran. What are they doing there? They're eliminating Christianity. The seminar you just put on, we can't have if they get to Israel and wipe out the entire sites in history that's been preserved there. So if you don't think they're not going after Christianity, wake up. Start looking at what's going on. You know, and the apology to you is, you know, we had a president a couple who said they'll fundamentally change America and our government. Well, guess what? It's very successfully being changed. And a lot of these things you're seeing going on, some of which I spoke to tonight, are the result of those changes. And guess what? They're being very successful, just like Hamas and Iran. And what did they do as they amassed more money, more capability, et cetera? What did they do? He explained it to us tonight. So the question is, what do you think about the future of Christianity and its attack by these folks if a lot of we decide to support the governments like Iran by giving them pallet loads of billions of dollars, allowing them to sell oil all over the world, and go from having very little money to having billions to support the stuff that you talked about that's going on? So do you think Christianity is the next step and the threat is now very obvious?
It's not even what I think, all right? It's enough to listen to the messages which are delivered by those murderers, and you just go to the mosques on Friday and listen to the imams. And again, it's not a hidden agenda. The idea was that first we'll take the Jews and then we'll go on Rome representing the Pope and the Vatican, standing for all Christianity. They say it loud and clear. They are commanded to do that. It's not even a choice. That's what Islam teaches. And if you fight for Islam, that's the plan. Every place that a Muslim set foot on is Muslim holy ground, including Dearborn, Michigan. All right? And if you gave it up, you're not supposed to, because it's holy Muslim ground. Islam is divided the world to two houses, the house of war, the house of Islam. House of war should be house of Islam. That's in the Quran. The only religion, all right, that teaches spreading its principles by the sword. Jesus did not say, you're going to kill people for me if they don't accept me. Neither did the Jewish religion. We do speak about Islam. That's their motto, basically. And again, it's out there, in print, in the Quran. Go and read. It's not even an opinion.
Right. Now our media and government talks about white nationalist Christians and the problem they represent.
I'm not going there.
I had a question.
One more question.
That
One
was
more.
my voice. Okay. In regards to Iran, can you give us an update on how close they are to a nuclear weapon?
I cannot. Let me tell you this. If a country wants to have nuclear weapons, they'll have nuclear weapons. I can guarantee to you, Iran will have nuclear weapons. The question is, do they want to? Because once you officially admit that you have it, that will change the whole world's policy towards you, including sanctions, etc. But they don't have to have it. They have to come close enough to make it within weeks or within months. And Iran is in that position. The world cannot stop Iran from having nuclear weapons. The question should be not who has the weapon, who is protected from the weapon. Let me give you a theoretical scenario that may be very practical. Let's say that Iran has the weapon and they decide to fire a rocket into Israel's territory. We have the arrow, it was intercepted, no damage was done, but somebody fired a nuclear missile. Do we have the right to retaliate with our nuclear weapons that we never admitted that we have, knowing that Iran is not protected and such a rocket will kill hundreds of thousands? What say you? It's a question of philosophy more than a question of warfare, but it may come to that. Iran, if they want to, will have nuclear weapons, regardless of President Biden says or Mr. Netanyahu, because that's a statement. If Iran wants to, they will have nuclear weapons.
Well, we want to thank you, Ronny, for
Thank you,
being
Pastor.
here. Ronny has an early flight. I do want to ask you one question, though, Ronny. We do, you know, the evangelical, the Calvary Chapel particularly, you know, really support Israel, and we pray for you often. I was just thinking about the music that you played, that music video. I've seen it before. I just thought it was fantastic, and I see the creativity. I just wondered if ever you would see any Islam folks doing anything like that. I don't think they could. And it's just such a wonderful expression of creativity, and which we really appreciate. As musicians, it just blows me away, that whole thing. But my thing is, we pray for you, and we'd like to know, just a quick question, what can we pray for? How can we direct our prayers specifically for you and for Israel?
Well, number one, I think that people in Israel do understand how much support we have from the U.S., especially from evangelical Americans. I know that Calvary Chapel is a friend of Israel. I know that you are pastor and this church is. And I took a mission upon myself when I started this. It's not just to share Israel with Americans, but also to tell my friends back home how much support we have from the American people. Sometimes it doesn't show well enough in the media. So maybe they need people like myself to go back home and tell them we are not alone. We have a lot of support, especially in the US of A. Praying, let's pray for the hostages, which is really the most painful issue to deal with. And again, we are limited in our powers how to help, how to rescue. We want to bring them home as quickly and safely as possible. We understand it may not be the case, may be too late for some of them, but when it comes to prayer, well, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. But to be more specific, for the hostages. We want to see them home.
All right. I want to pray right now. Father, we are thankful for having this time with Ronnie. Pray, Lord, that you would bless his journey home. And we do want to lift up, Lord, these hostages. We don't know where they're at, but you know. You be with them right now, Lord. And I pray that you would bring them home, even as that glorious song requests. That, Lord, you'd bring them home. And that, Lord, you would bring some kind of solution that there might be peace in Jerusalem. We pray as your word has told us to, we're in obedience to your word. We pray, Lord, for the peace of Jerusalem. And we pray, Lord, that it won't be too long before we can visit Ronnie in his homeland. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Ronnie. God bless you.
Thank you.